I'm John Beaudin. We're finally up to our entire interview with Chris Thompson, the voice of Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light, but the Manfred Mann version, which in this series you'll hear Bruce didn't really like very much. We talk about the late, great Nicky Hopkins, who was basically sabotaging his career, which was sad considering how many people he worked with, the Stones, the Beatles, Frampton, and Chris Thompson in the band Night. How he met Manfred Mann, the high and low points in his career, and a lot more. Oh yeah, a funny Joe Walsh story in this. I think you'll enjoy it. It's our special guest, Chris Thompson, on Rock History Book. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. I want to talk to you for a lot of years. Lots and lots of years. So let's start with this. Well, Chris Thompson lives in Belgium. What happened? It's beautiful, I know, but...
I met my wife, and I was living in America, and I met her, and it was a toss-up. She was either going to come and live in America, or I was going to go to live in Belgium. So we went and had a look, and it's a lovely place. Leuven, it's called. It's a really beautiful. It's a university city. Lots, it's a good place.
Good for you. Where were you living when you lived in the U.S.?
Newport Beach in California.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong. Well, I have to say the weather was just fantastic and everything, but it got very old really after being there for a few years. Felt, it's not very real, Newport Beach,
Whenever I hear, go ahead, sorry.
I said, well, I met some nice friends, but yeah, most of it is, to do with money and looking good, I suppose. Yeah, which got very old to me after a while.
Well, a lot of times when I talk to musicians who used to live I'm Canadian. Most of 90% of my audience is in the U.S. I love Americans. They love me. I have a Canadian channel for I know you recorded the Ian Thomas song, The Runner, but the Canadian channel has so much people on our channel that Americans have never heard of. So if I put them on the big channel, this channel, I'll actually lose people watching. But anyway, long story.
But you got some great singers. The guy from Guess Who, I can't remember his name.
Burton Cummings.
Burton, yeah, I like Burton. We met each other a few times, but he was great.
He's a character and a very distinctive voice. By the way, how does it feel being one of the greatest voices in the world? I mean, I was talking to someone the other day where we're doing a live feed. We're going, everyone's talking about Paul Rogers and Jimmy Page, and then all of a sudden the Chris Thompson people started coming on. They just like, what are you, crazy? So how does it feel being one of the greatest voices of all time?
Well, very lucky, I think.
What do you say, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very lucky. I'm very privileged to do what I did, and I was very lucky. Somebody sent me a live recording of something I did with Alan Parsons in Mexico, or something like that, and it was.
Didn't you do the voice with him?
Yeah, yeah, we did the voice, yeah. But this was Limelight, I think, and I listened to it. It's a long time ago, and I listened to it, and I went, I could actually really sing.
Well, Paul McCartney has those moments. People ridicule Paul sometimes, going, he'll be in the restaurant, he'll hear the Beatles, he'll always go, oh, they were a good little band. Yeah. But can you objectively listen to yourself? I mean, that's an old question, but can you?
It depends what it is. There's some things I did I can't objectively listen to, but the majority of my stuff I can, I think, and I still don't like some of it that I didn't like in the first place. But I think a lot of the things I really like.
Did your parents get what you were doing? Did they support you? Did they understand your road?
Well, my father actually died when I was 8 years old, so he was a musician. He would have loved it, I think. But my mother always wanted me to do a real job, So, so I did that before I went to university and stuff. But I think there was an article about Blinded by Light in the local newspaper, and I think after that, she was convinced that I was doing a real job.
Well, I'd heard an interview. I was just listening to an interview with you with a smaller channel, a guy who was just a huge fan, you could tell. And he was asking you about meeting Manfred, but it's interesting the fact that you, until he said you're getting this much a week, you didn't really know. I mean, you're going over to his house over and over again.
No. In fact, we laughed about it when I finally decided to leave. We laughed about the fact that I never was actually given the job in the first place. It was just, yeah, well, I have to pay you this amount of money. It was funny. It was funny, but that's Manfred. I mean, he's just a funny guy.
Was that almost a retainer in the beginning? Like you're going to be with us?
It was exactly a retainer. That's what we hadn't made a record. The band before with Mick Rogers was, successful, but Manfred wanted to do some more pop stuff and everything. So, we had a deal with the record company, and I guess you have to look at how much you can spend on recording and how much you can spend on the band. So, yeah, it was a small retainer, I can tell you that.
But he had heard you sing something, right? He had heard you sing something and asked, is that you, right?
Yeah, I sent him a tape from the only thing I had of me singing was a kind of I guess it was like a recorded thing from one of the clubs I played in New Zealand, and it was pretty badly recorded, but you could hear me okay. Yeah, and he asked me, is that really you? Is that you singing? So, yeah.
New Zealand, known for, a few things, rugby, sheep, and kiwi. Care to explain what's going on? What were you doing there in New Zealand?
In New Zealand? Well, I was always playing bands in local clubs. And
so you were that guy then. Back then you were the music guy. Everyone knew that about you?
No, not really. I mean, I lived in Hamilton, which is a very small place. We had local clubs. So I suppose people knew me in Hamilton. And then we finally got headhunted by a really prestigious club in Auckland. And then people began to, realize that I could sing, and I had a good band, and people would come and see us. And we were lucky to make that step up, because then I met some people from overseas came and played with us, because we were the only club that had alcohol after 10 o'clock at night. So everybody came up to see us. The Stones came to see us, all sorts of people. And I got friendly with Trevor Morace, the drummer from the Peddlers. I don't know whether you've ever heard of that band. And he just said to me, man, you got to come to England. You got to come to England. I'll get us a gig. And, and to me, a gig was 7 nights a week in a pub. To him, a gig was a gig. So he sent me a telegram saying, I got a gig, man. You got to come over. So I sold everything and I went there, and we did that one gig. And I had to hunt around for work after that.
But you know what? I completely forgot that you co-wrote "You're the Voice." I mean, I was going in the other day and going through, because Graham Goebel of LRB, a Little River Band, gave me an update on his health, and because I communicate with him in radio. It's strange. Radio guys are always famous for telling their friends that they're friends with the artists, which rarely ever happens, because they're busy and we're busy, and we're really connected, but not. But Graham's one of those guys that I've kept in contact with. But anyway, I was listening to Farnham, and I'm listen to Whispering Jack, and I go, wait a minute, how could I have forgotten that Chris Thompson co-wrote "You're the Voice"? What part in that song did you contribute?
Well, I got together with Andy and Maggie Ryder. We were put together by our publishing company, Rondor Music. We all were signed to there, and they said, why don't you three guys get together and see what you can come up with? So I organized a session around at my place in the studio that I had, and I had a Lindrum, and so I had set up the claps, something to play to. I set that up, and so we just, I actually played bass when we were trying to write it. So I played bass. Andy played a grand piano that I had. I was borrowed from somebody, and Maggie played synthesizers, and we just played it over and over and over again. And it morphed into a verse and a chorus. And so we agreed to meet and come up with some ideas for melody and stuff like that. I mean, we were singing a few things, but nothing concrete. So anyway, after they left, I sat down with the track I had and started coming up with some ideas for the chorus. And then Maggie called me and she said, look, I've got an idea for the chorus. Can I come around? So I sort of thought, oh, shit, I really like my bit. Anyway, she came and she played the piano and she went, da, 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 da. And I went, whoa. And that was the chorus. So I wrote a lyric because the other two didn't write lyrics. So I wrote a lyric. And I just thought the song was much better than the lyric that I'd written. I had You're the Voice, obviously. We had the chorus. And by chance, I bumped into Keith Reid. And I just said to Keith, do you co-write, Keith, from Procol Harum, Keith? And he said, no. And I said, oh, well, I've got this song and it's got what we call in the trade yuck lines that you aren't happy with, but you're happy with the majority of it, but not those lines. And because it was a protest song, or not a protest song, because it was a song, not just a normal song about love or anything like that, it just had to be right. Anyway, so I went round to Keith's place, persuaded him, and we spent about 4 hours and finished the lyric and made it what it is. And I mean, Keith's fantastic. He wrote some great things, but we started from a page of my lyrics. So, that's my contribution anyway. I contributed everything, but we all wrote it as three people writing the music and Keith and I writing the lyric.
When I know it was turned down originally, right? People were they turning down your version? Because I've heard your version; it's great.
Well, people weren't turning it down. The Rondo music thought it was a hit. So did I. So did Andy. So did Keith. We all thought it was a hit. So I was making a record at the time on Atlantic, and Doug Morris, I sent him the song, and he said, people don't want to listen to protest songs anymore. And so he didn't allow me to put it on my record. I'm really happy he didn't, because John did it, and the rest is history, really.
Such a huge, huge song. I mean, wasn't it like one of the biggest songs in Australian history?
Oh, yeah, it was. Biggest song in Australian history, for absolutely certain. And, it revived John's career, and it was never a hit in America, because the American company remixed it. There's a record company for you. You've got a hit all over the world. I mean, it was number one everywhere, but the Americans decided they would remix it. And they got, what's his first name? Clear Mountain. I can't remember what his name. He was mixing everything, and they got him to do it. And he just took the 16s out, he took that out, and he just was doom, bah, and it just took the life out of it. So,
well, you kept going in that direction too, because you didn't write this one, but I know you had another song, "An Age of Reason," and another song after that on the next album. But he said he released Age of Reason after that. What About the World? So he kept in that vein. John kept in that vein.
Yeah. He did a couple of songs from. Actually, Andy and myself, he did a couple of songs on the next three albums, I think. Yeah. So, yeah.
Don't tell me don't tell me it can't be done.
Don't tell me it can't be done. Yeah. And
that's a great song, by the way. That's a great
Rolling
song.
Home is my favorite. He did that. That was my favorite to John, but he kind of lost the didn't have the big hit to follow. You're the Voice. It's hard to follow a hit like that. So, yeah, I hope he's okay, John. I've had no. I sent a mail to his management saying I hope give him my best, and they said sure I will. But I've not heard another thing.
Graham told me he's doing better.
Good.
Graham Goble said he's doing better. With you, how did you handle? I was just talking to Justin Hayward last week, and I know you guys shared War of the Worlds. You were both on there, but I asked him. I said, "Well, why?" It's hard to come up to an artist that you really respect. You are one of those, and going, "Why aren't you dead?" It's not that. It's like why. Fame kills people. You look at Taylor Hawkins. I'm not sure why Taylor Hawkins died. Ultimately, no one knows. But sometimes you look at a young guy. The 27 Club's a great example, right? They get everything they ever want, then they realize on some level that that's not enough. That's everything you ever wanted is not what you want. How have you survived? How have you survived all that?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't think Manfred Mann's Earth Band, as such, the fame, it wasn't. We were able to walk down the street and nobody really recognized us, because they did in Germany and places where we played a lot, but not really. And so we were fairly able to lead a normal kind of life. And I've always been a guy that kept fit. I kept fit, still keep fit, touch wood. And I never felt like I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve, or that I always felt like I had to keep working and looking in different directions for things, and kept working with Manfred even though I'd left the band. And and then I worked with Alan, which was incredible, really. And I didn't really have to deal with fame, thank goodness.
And that's John Helliwell of Supertramp was telling us. I said, well, he said, no, everyone thinks that somehow I'm famous, the sax player guy. And he said, but I was the spokesperson of the band on stage because Roger and Rick didn't say that much. But he says, I go have coffee. People, they'll go, yeah, maybe now and then there's rumblings in the back of me. He says, I love that. That's it. That's enough for me, he says.
Yeah, I love John. He's a good old friend.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. We've done so much together, John. Yeah, and he's brilliant.
Blinded by the Light, it's one of those songs that changes the trajectory, and I like it when people ask you about that, and you have to tell them, well, Springsteen wrote that song. And I've been caught in situations like that as an interviewer, but I've been in radio 40 years, and I'm a research pig. Tell me how did that song change your life? I mean, really, you were
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I have to say, I love Bruce, but it was the band at Manfred working that song to get it to where it was that big hit. And, I don't like Bruce's version, by the way. I've never liked Bruce's version. Well, I hadn't even heard Bruce's version when we recorded ours. I just heard Manfred singing this horrible version, because he's a horrible singer, but he's actually a good singer, but a horrible sound on his voice. So I hadn't heard it. I just interpreted what he did, and we put it down because the chords are all different. So it's not a monotone. And I think that's and it's got ear candy up the wazoo. So it changed my life, definitely. I mean, number one in America, number one in most places in the world, and it's still on heavy rotation in the States on those classic rock stations. It's marvelous.
So did he give you any direction, because you were fairly new and unknown at that time, that as far as singing, because Colin from the Zombies told me that Rod Argent, when they're recording, I don't know if you know those guys, but he says he guides me through all the vocals. I said, what? You're Colin Blunstone? What the hell? And he says, no, I don't mind. I'm okay with that. He's told me that twice. But so anyway, a long question. Did you just interpret it the way you wanted it? How did that go?
Well, like I said, Manfred was just singing it at me every time we said. I mean, the thing with Manfred is he sits down and he just plays at the piano, excuse me, over and over again, whatever he's doing with. And in this case, it was Blinded by the Light. And he just kind of mumbled this shit. And I just had the lyric sheet and I just sang it the way I sang it. And, he didn't at all give me any direction. In fact, when I was doing the vocal, he went, across the road to the fish and chip shop and had lunch. So, so that's how much direction he gave me on that. But, you know, he heard me sing it a lot of times, and I heard him sing it a lot of times. So it was just, it gelled itself, really.
Like before he goes into, what is it, chopsticks he does in the middle?
Yeah,
yeah. Before he does, you're just wailing right into that. That's just, to me, that's just magic.
Yeah, it was a bit of a chance, I think. That was it's the engineer for you. He was listening through some outtakes and he heard that, and he said, "Manfred, why don't we put that in the song? You know, after the solo." And that's what we did. So engineers often, you know, it's just that one sentence that somebody says that makes all the difference to everything. And you know, with Blinded, especially the beginning of Manfred had this idea about a heavy cello do 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 at the front, you know, and we mixed it like that. And the record company guy, Jerry Braun, came and he listened to it and he went, "Man, that's rubbish. I don't like the beginning. It's just blah, blah, blah." And he left, and we were just sitting there going, shit. I could see my career just going out already before it even started. And then Laurie, the engineer, said, "I've got, you know, there's another bit that you play, Manfred, which is the beginning of the song." He was playing it somewhere else when he was jamming around. So we put that on the front, and the rest is history as far as that's concerned as well.
There's a gentleman here, Peter Bradford. He asked me, I'll always go, "Hey, I'm interviewing this person. Do you have any questions?" And sometimes I used to not do that because it makes it sound like I'm lazy. I'm not. I do a lot of work, but sometimes they come up with better questions than I would have. But he had asked you, Blinded by the Light, was it really banned by some stations because there was a line in there, the deuce line, that does... Was it really banned?
Absolutely. We did Manfred and I did a 52 or 54 station tour in America just to tell people it wasn't douche, it was deuce. Yeah, we did 52 or 54 stations in about a week, just trying to get, you know, yeah. And the stupid thing is that it was all to do with the way the machines were lined up. There's a thing called azimuth, and you have to line it up before the session and you line it up when you mix. And for some reason or other, it wasn't lined up when I did the vocal. So when we came to mix, it had that kind of, you know, the wrapped up like a douche. It sounded, just was funny. And yeah, it made people play it over and over again, but it also got us banned in a lot of places in America.
Did you leave Manfred Mann to do Night?
Yeah, I guess I did. It wasn't to do Night because I didn't know what I was going to do. I don't know. I just wanted to do something on my own, which ended up by being Night. Yeah, that was a very unsuccessful record, really. I mean, I know we had a top 40 hit with Hot Summer Night, but yeah, there was a lot of it around that. Working with Richard was very difficult. And
everyone's told me working with Richard is very difficult.
I actually like Richard. I really like Richard, and he was, I learned an awful lot from him. But you never know which person he was going to be when he came in through the door. He was going to be whatever, you know. He could
is that mad genius stuff to you? Sorry to interrupt you, but is that because David Henschel told me? He says to me that's just because he's worked with a lot, you know, tapes, spliced tapes on his shoulders or whatever it is. I don't know. Is that mad genius stuff, you think?
Well, I never saw Richard with anything over his shoulder. Someone else would be carrying it for him. But yeah, he did have genius. I mean, you know, when you listen to You're So Vain, you know that there's a genius made that. And the Pointer Sisters, you know, he made some great records with the Pointers. And he tried, you know, he heard us when we were kind of like a pub band, and we were doing covers. Stevie and I were singing, and we had some electricity there, but we didn't have the songs to make the record with. So, you know, it was difficult because we had one song with her singing, one song with me singing, and people couldn't, you know, join it together and say this is what they were. And we never found the magic song that we used to do together. You know, we used to do Fire Down Below, which you know, which was magic for us. But Bob Seger had already recorded it, so you know, there's nothing much we could do about that.
Hot Summer Night was, I remember, a hit in Canada, got a lot of airplay.
Yeah, it did. And Richard turned down Doctor Doctor, unfortunately, because things would have been different if he hadn't turned that down. But
is that right? Is that right? I didn't know.
Yeah, we were offered Doctor Doctor first, and Richard didn't rate it.
You were going to sing that, though. You would have sung that for sure.
The two of us were going to sing it, and that's what we were looking for. And we tried to convince Richard, but you can't convince Richard. He does what he wants to do.
With Stevie singing, I remember going, I loved you. I loved her voice, and I had no problem with her. But you just said it. There was just something, there was a disconnect for me, even because I loved you as a singer so much. I wanted you to sing every song.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So there you go. By the way, Angel Station, I really like that album.
Me too.
To me, that was just I like when he experimented. I love the experimental stuff, but I'm a real music fan. I'm the one that, you know, reads the liner notes. But in '79, I was graduating, and like You Angel You, God.
Yeah.
God,
I was still doing that. I was doing 2 songs from that record when I retired at the end of last year.
You did the single, right? You did the first song.
What was the first song?
I forget what's that? I'll tell you.
We did. I just did Angels at My Gate and You Angel You. I didn't do anything else from there.
Okay. I was listening to, I think on Spotify, I forget the first song on the album. It doesn't matter.
I definitely forget the first song on the album. But yeah, Angel Station, You Angel You became a fan favorite of my you know, small group of fans with my Norwegian band. So, you know, we played it everywhere.
So many Bob Dylan songs. A lot. I mean, he obviously, Manfred was a huge, even before the Earth Band, obviously he the Mighty Quinn. I mean, so many Dylan songs.
Well, Manfred was a fan of songs, and it didn't matter whether it was Dylan or it was Bruce or whoever. He just could pick out some stuff, and you know, it's like Davey's on the Road Again. I don't know whether you know that song. It's a Robbie Robertson, John Simon song, and if you could hear the original and what it ended up with, that was another big hit for us. I think it was on mandolin and Squeezebox. Davy's on. Do you know that song, Davy's on the Road Again?
I don't think it was a hit in Canada. I don't know.
No, it was a big hit in Europe. You should listen to that. And yeah, it's crazy how he changed that song. He used to drive us mad. You know, he'd sit down and play that song whenever he could find a piano. You know, he's a crazy genius, Manfred. I mean, he really is. Now, unfortunately, he's still making the same record he was making 15 years ago. And, you know, he's lost the ability to be able to do something and then put it away. You know, he just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and think that's what will make it better. But
you touched on something a while ago, and it's something that I've always, even though I've been in radio 40 years, I've been sort of an underachiever. Evening show, yeah, I'll do the evening show. People leave me alone. But I mention this for a reason. There's a part of me, like 10 years ago, I started going on YouTube, and YouTube paid for this house. I do really well on YouTube. I say that because I was under the radar a little bit in my career. I'm 63 now. There's a part of me going, well, I want to do good work, or I want to still, touching on what you said with Manfred, I still want to discover that what happened to me in the past makes me still hungry. And to me, you still sound like you're hungry.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've got some things. I mean, I work all the time, But that I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Just wish I was in 76. I mean, it's fine. I feel fine and everything, but you know, yeah, it's getting old. There's no good about it, really. It's yeah, it's demanding.
You know what? But do you want to be? I mean, I know that when Blinded came out and that was a big break and that was great, and you were a younger man. But people always ask me, and artists, we talk about this all the time, going, yeah, but I don't think I'd want to be the younger version of me when listening to that song, because I kind of like this a lot more now. The frontal lobe is fully formed. Don't you think?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
By the way, if you remember me, 3.2 million hits on Spotify alone. Yeah.
That, you know, Richard wanted to do an album of ballads with me in after If You Remember Me, Success. And I said no, because I felt a kind of I didn't feel like just dropping the band. I just, you know, but in retrospect, I should have done that album, because it would have been hugely successful in America. And we would have found the songs, and I was in good voice at that point in time. So, yeah, that's. I mean, if you want to talk about regrets, I think that's the only kind of musical regret I have, really, that I should have done that album with Richard. Mind you, he would have driven me crazy too. So who knows?
I agree, though. I agree. I got to a point with your career. I just got hungry for more stuff. I just wanted more stuff, you know, because I remember my friends would go, I said, he should leave Manfred Mann and he should be Chris Thompson by himself. We'd have these little parties. We'd all talk around the big JBL speakers, right?
Well, I should have been, I guess. No, and in some ways I did. I mean, I went out, as I said, I've been playing with my Norwegian band for 21 years, and we were really great. And I'm in the process right now of mixing out one of our last shows, which is 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it's a lot of music to mix, and it's difficult. Live albums are just terrible to mix. I swore after Budapest that I would never do another live album, and here I am in the same situation, trying to make it sound like it did in my head.
Working with Nicky Hopkins, did you ask him about the Beatles and the Stones? And
yeah, I did.
May he rest in peace. What stories that guy had, huh?
Well, I got a few Nicky Hopkins stories, that's for sure. On the road, he was very difficult to deal with, but he was just fantastic, Nicky. He was just, and I had to listen to the remaster of the Night albums, and of course Nicky played on them. And when I was listening to I didn't want to listen to it, really. I thought somebody else should do it, but I listened to it and I just got hung up on what Nicky was playing. He was just so great, so great. He was just difficult on the road because he was Nicky, you know. He just, what can I say about Nicky? He drank too much and did a few other things too much, and he had no handbrake at all.
Yeah. I mean, Sympathy for the Devil, you know, Give Me Shelter, working with the Kinks. Jeez, it's crazy. Yeah,
but he got himself out of that, or actually a friend of ours got him out of it, took him to the Scientology you know, Fix Them Up Center or whatever it's called. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And they fixed him, and he ended up teaching there. And he was in good shape, really, really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
But he had hurt himself.
Well, sometimes it's too little, too late. Sometimes too, the body has to recuperate. You know, we used to in the old days, coming from a long line of alcoholics, we'd always tell each other, "I'm not an alcoholic," but they'd always say, just don't drink all the time.
Yeah.
Let your body recoup, drink a lot of water, be fit. If you're going to do it. Were you on A Single Man by Elton John?
Yes.
What did you do on there?
Sang backgrounds to a couple of songs. Part-Time Love and something else I can't remember.
Was he ever there? Was he ever there?
Yeah, he was there all the time, Elton. Yeah.
Because I just talked to Stuart Epps, who worked on that album, And I asked him, I said, well, that's a different Elton. I mean, you know, the heyday, Elton was my favorite artist. And that's when the slides started happening. And I said, what was it like? He said, oh, it was just Elton.
He was a lovely guy to me, Elton. Yeah, he was very generous and very kind and very happy that I was doing it. And we got on very well. I haven't seen him for ages, but because he's Elton. But yeah, no, he was great. He was there all the time.
Pat Simmons. I always say Pat Simmons was the glue that kept, you know, when Tom left, and he's just recently left again because of his back, but he'll be back. And, you know, Michael came in. I know you worked with him as well, and One Step Closer. But when to me, it was still the Doobie Brothers because Pat Simmons was still there. And I know you co-wrote half the songs on Arcade. Did you know Pat before then?
Before Arcade?
Yeah.
I can't even remember how I met Pat, but
was it One Step? Well, it would have been One Step Closer then.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been that, or maybe it was through David Pack. I think perhaps. And anyway, yeah, I mean, I lived at Pat's farm in Santa Cruz for all the time we were making that record. He's a wonderful man, great guitarist, lovely guy. We had a lot of fun. We laughed a lot, that's for sure. And we toured. We toured with Pat. You know, we did Japan, Hong Kong. It was fantastic, and America, of course. It was great.
So going into I guess you probably can't get into a studio after you did Blinded by the Light and you started working with other artists. I'm sure every artist asked you about Blinded by the Light, right? I mean, it must have been like.
Okay, I'd have to tell you, I went out to a fondue restaurant in Switzerland. Bruce was playing the next night. We had played and we had a day off, and the promoter said, "Look, Bruce is coming tomorrow. I'm going to take him out for fondue. Do you want to come in and sit together and chew the fat?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be fantastic." So we did that. We talking away. Like he does, talk about Denny's and all those kind of things we were doing. And then I said to him, so Bruce, what do you think about Blinded by the Light? And there was a long silence. And he said, what was that? What's that other song you had with that band Night? I said, yeah, it's Hot Summer Night. He said, yeah, I like that song.
What?
So he didn't like it at all. He didn't like it at all. And yeah. And yeah, and it was funny because the next day, I mean, we got on really well. That was just a funny moment. We got on, and the next day that we're going up the mountain to do something, the band, Little Stephen and them all, and Clarence, of course. And I just didn't have time. They asked me to come up to the top and have something to drink, and I just couldn't do it. And I wish I had. But anyway, I'm going to see Bruce on the 18th. Yeah, he's invited me. He's playing just outside where I live, so he invited me to go see him. So that's going to be nice.
That's a revelation to me. I had no idea, because I would think.
No, he didn't like it. He didn't like Fire either. He tried to stop Fire from coming out.
Well, the Pointer Sisters, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and the Pointer Sisters did such a great job. I mean, yeah, people always say that Bruce was upset because Blinded was his first number one, but he's done so many things after that. I'm sure he's not still upset about it. If you look around, there's a very funny tape of him sitting and playing the guitar and talking. I don't know where it is, about douche, about that and the song, and it's very funny. It's a Bruce Springsteen douche. I think you'll find it's a revelation in itself that he was pretty upset about getting, it being associated with the song. But of course, it was the engineer's fault for not lining up the azimuth properly. Pretty funny.
You worked with Steve Hackett, who is still to this day one of my favorite interviews. I've interviewed him like I think 7-8 times. I'm a big Genesis fan, so I was very nervous the first time I went to talk to him. I don't get really nervous anymore because I've been doing it so long. But tell me about working with him in, I think, 86, right? I think.
Yeah. Although, yeah. Well, I did so many sessions like that. I don't know how he got my number, called me up, sent me a tape with some of the songs on it. And I think we did 4 songs, I think, together. And yeah, he was a lovely guy, very studious, very serious. And yeah, the songs didn't come out. Did they come out in 86? Did they? Because
Well, no, it says you recorded with him in 86. I saw
yeah,
that.
I recorded in 86 and the song came out in 90, I think, because Brian May got involved and yeah, they kind of finished it up together. So
speaking of Brian May, sorry to interrupt you. What was that like touring with his band?
fantastic. We had a lovely time. It was the easiest gig I ever did. I mean,
Why?
like babysitting. If Brian felt like he couldn't sing a song, he's a very nice guy, Brian, very proud, very serious about himself as an artist, but he was worried about singing a couple of the songs. So if he ever felt like he couldn't do it, then I just sang that. But I ended up by most of the time playing cowbell and singing background vocals with Cozy and Neil Murray and and Jamie Moses and Brian, of course. Fantastic fun.
When you're doing like the all-star sort of thing, where there's a lot of different people, that's got to be, I mean, Randy Meisner told me years ago, because he can't do it anymore because he drank too much. He said he that was one of his favorite things. He's way more fun than the Eagles, he says.
Yeah. I've done some really great things like that. Really good. Yeah.
Because they're your peers and obviously they're happy to see you, and or sharing the stage. There's something about that that's pretty special.
It's very, very special. Very special. I've done some pretty special things like that. I mean, Alan was great because there was 3 singers, but when we did that, we did the World, what was it called? World Peace Concert in Holland, and that was with Joe Cocker and myself and Candy Dulfer, and yeah, it was a good feeling. Always a good feeling to do those special, best of, rock, whatever they call it, rock meets classics, and all those kind of things that we've done. Really, really special.
Ian Anderson told me that I said, weird fan story. He said, well, I've got the best one. You're never going to hear a better one. I go, okay. So I'm on stage and I hear pressure on my chest. He looks down, he sees blood. He says, oh my God, I've been shot. And he keeps looking down. Then he's looking down so often, he looks between his legs on the floor and there's a used tampon. Craziest story I've ever heard. He says, someone threw what? Like, who does that? Do you have any crazy fan stories? Or are people really nice to you?
People are really nice to me, always. Yeah. I mean, the only crazy fan story I've got is just recently I did that because of COVID, all my gigs got put into that last year because I refused to play any longer than that. And I was going to originally retire in 2021, but we couldn't do that. So we put all these gigs together. We were doing like really a lot of gigs. And this couple started coming to the gigs, German couple. And they had their own Chris Thompson T-shirts and they came to every single gig we played. And then we did an extra special gig just to say goodbye to the guys all live in Bergen in Norway. So we decided we'd do a very special gig in Bergen just to say goodbye finally. And they flew across to Bergen and came to that. So, yeah, they were crazy fans. They were great. But other than that, I don't think anything. Oh, actually, I have to, look at this. Sorry.
No, that's okay, of course.
I'll be back. Yeah, crazy fan stories. Guy said to me, hey, I've got a guitar that my grandfather had. Do you want it? And I said, well, you can't give me the guitar. He said, yeah, I'll bring it. I'll show you. It's fantastic. I love it. It's this. It's a 1929 guitar called the Gibson. So he brought it to the hotel room and said, man, you can have it. I want you to have it. And I said, don't be stupid, man. You can't give me that. No, I want you to have it. I want you to have it. And he left the guitar in there, and I had to do some repair on it and everything. But yeah, he was a crazy fan. He gave me his grandfather's guitar, 1920.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess that's a crazy story, right?
No, that's one of the best ones I've ever heard. I've never heard anything like that. Well, by the way, I liked your Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone, people, it's strange. Let me just say this. Sometimes people go, oh, yeah, the obligatory Christmas album. I'm going, who doesn't like singing Christmas songs that'll get played every year?
I think I was very, very pleased with those Christmas songs because I thought we captured the Jingle Bells idea of songs, and I think we kept that going. And it was nice to do Silent Night, of course, because it's one of my favorites. And but I like the Get Ready. Get ready for Christmas. I like that.
Rick Wakeman. Well, the Christmas stuff, I'm always happy whenever any one artist that I love releases one because I love Christmas. So. Rick Wakeman.
Yeah. Rick.
Lawrence, After Arabia. Tell me about John Anderson. I said, Rick sounds like a funny guy. He tells a lot of jokes. And John says, well, yeah, but he keeps telling the same joke because he forgot he told it to me. I went, okay. But tell me about working with him.
Well, I mean, I didn't see Rick while we were making that the music for that movie. He did a lot of the music for the movie, but I met Rick when I first went to England. I told you I went to England because Trevor called me and said I had a gig, and I was staying at his farmhouse, and I was jet lagged, of course. I got woken up at like 10 o'clock in the morning by this insane keyboard playing. And and I walked across to the barn, and there was Rick Wakeman playing, waiting for his band to turn up to rehearse. And so I saw Rick quite a lot because he played with a band that lived around in that area. So I saw Rick quite a lot then, and saw Rick, of course, when we did the Guitar Legends with Joe Walsh, and funniest guy in the world, Joe Walsh. Tell you, the funniest guy in the world. He came to a party I had. Somebody called me and said, I've got to babysit Joe Walsh when his guitar ready. What can I do? And I said, well, I'm having a party tonight. Do you want to bring him to the party? So he said, fantastic, I'll bring him to the party. So knock on the door, 10:30 or 11 or something like that. I opened the door. I wish I could remember the guitar roadie's name. Anyway, I can't. And standing beside him was Joe Walsh with a Groucho Marx mask on and a camera. And he came in and he took photos of everybody at the party with the Groucho Marx mask on, which is crazy because everybody looks the same. I said, what are you doing that for? No, it's for my album. I'm doing an album of Groucho Marx, everybody. So anyway, about 2 o'clock in the morning, just before he had to go, because he was leaving, Alan, that's another name will come to it. Anyway, so he was the life of the party, having fun, drinking, being a fantastic guy, as he is, amazingly funny. And anyway, so he had to go have a pee before he left, and he'd gone. Anyway, so when I went into the bathroom where the toilet was, I noticed the toilet roll had gone. He had taken the toilet roll, blow his nose or something like that, but he took the whole toilet roll. So anyway, so I can't remember how long after that, it was maybe 6 years or 7 years, we do the Guitar Heroes with Joe. And I could tell you stories, so many with Joe on that particular day. But anyway, this one, the night before the gig, I'm sitting with Brian at the bar, we're having a drink, and we'd been waiting for Joe. He didn't turn up to rehearsals in London, and he hadn't turned up to rehearsals that day either. And everybody was freaking out. Brian was sitting there all upset. And anyway, the next minute, hey, Brian, my man. It's Joe. Hey, how you doing, man? Brian says, well, really great to see you, man. You missed rehearsal. Yeah, man, I'm sorry. Plane was delayed. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so we're sitting there. We have a beer and everything like that. And Brian says, Joe, this is Chris Thompson. Do you know Chris Thompson? And Joe said, yeah, I stole the toilet roll from his bathroom. I stole the toilet roll from his bathroom.
He remembered that?
He remembered that. And I spoke to him afterwards about it, and I was saying, Joe, how can you possibly remember that? He said, man, I can't do his accent, but he said, I made a fortune out of pretending to be drunk. I said to him, how do you remember if he's so drunk? I made a fortune out of pretending to be drunk or stoned or whatever. What a guy. What a guy.
You know, in the Beatles documentary, when Joe's the guy who says something, the most poignant thing I've ever heard in my life about music. He says, when you're in it, it seems like you're in a, I'm paraphrasing, it seems like you're in a tornado, everything's flying all over the place. But when you look back, it's like a fine-tuned opera. When you look back at it in hindsight, it's amazing how life can be, because again, when we're young, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun being young, though, I think. I had a lot of fun being young in Hamilton, New Zealand, and we were just living this dream of being musicians and playing all this stuff and playing with the band and writing stuff. And, you know, we were going to be successful. We were going to be successful. There was, you know, we were in New Zealand. Nobody was at that time came out of New Zealand being successful. And of that band, I'm the only one that came out and did anything else. And they're all still there.
How do they react? How do family and friends react? Okay, I'll use that example again, Blinded by the Light. That is everywhere. And you can't not hear that song. Even through osmosis, you're going to hear it. How did everyone react in your circle? Pastor?
They were all fantastic. They all said I was they found me an inspiration. That's what has been said to me so many times. And they still say it to me now when I speak to them. And nobody was ever negative about anything except for one guy.
What's that one guy?
When a guy called Larry, he was a singer there as well, and full of jealousy. And when You're the Voice was a huge hit, all being played in New Zealand and everything like that, they were sitting around drinking, and Larry said, well, Chris Thompson never had anything to do with that song. It's all bull. He paid those other people to say he was a writer. You know, that's the only negative thing I ever heard from anybody.
That says everything about him.
Yeah, of course.
You know how jealous people who cheat on their wives are very jealous, because it says more about who they are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, but yeah. He's the only person who's ever said anything negative to me about anything that I did in my life.
A high point of your career? What's the highest point? Is it hearing Blinded by the Light the first time, or what was it? What was it?
I think the high point for me was when Harry Maloney, our manager, came in and went, guys, we're number one in America. And I said, let's get some champagne. And Chris Slater and Manfred said, who's going to pay for it?
No.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. And I went, you know what? I'll pay for it. But that's Manfred and Chris Slater. That was just, you know, how they were. But that I think that was a high point for me, because, yeah, it was a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
We were number one in America, a young boy from Hamilton, New Zealand. That was it.
Yeah. Did you call anybody? You must have made calls.
I called my mother.
Yeah. And congratulations, man. That was nice. That was, and everything was perfect. The album cover was perfect. The sequence of song, everything, that was just one of those, if you didn't have it, your friend had it. It was just a moment in time. Hardest part of your career, what was the hardest for you looking back?
The hardest part of my career.
Number one was the best, but what was the most challenging, maybe?
I think probably making the First Night album. I think that was the hardest thing for me. Trying to balance the band and Richard and find the songs and just, I felt like I was digging myself into this huge hole. And it was very, very hard for me to make that record.
Well, I ran out and bought it and was very happy with it. I understand that. Oh, go ahead.
I've had some other hard times, but mainly to do with, working so hard on something and it not being successful. But, that's just part of being a musician. So,
yeah. At one point when you were young in New Zealand that people came up to you and said, hey, you got something there, speaking of the voice. How old were you when people started saying, holy God, man, you've got this instrument?
I think I was in my early 20s before people actually said that.
Really?
But, because I wasn't, I didn't have the sound that I had when I left New Zealand. I had a special sound and I'd been working on that and I was very unhappy with that. But when I left New Zealand, well, actually the last years when we worked in Auckland, people said that to me a lot, that I'd, finally got the sound that I wanted in my voice and I could sing anything. But, it's a gift. What I was given was a gift. It was a lot of hard work to get to it, but it was a gift. There's no two ways. I believe absolutely that I was just given that and I had to work on making it the way I wanted it to be. And I think that was the last 2 years in New Zealand, which was when I was 20, 21, 22. And, and then, after that, I kept working on it. It was something that I still work on it now. I still work on stuff.
Hope you enjoyed that. Remember, support the channel. In the links, there are all kinds of links for you to support our channel, whether you want to make a donation, buy a t-shirt, join our Patreon, get early access to all our videos, and a lot more. We appreciate when you spread the word for us. It means a lot. We have a whole bunch of different stations. Rock History Music, our sister station, is the biggest one. I think we're at 117,000 subscribers right now. That's for current interviews and music news. This one is basically about our full interviews and sometimes today in history. And if you're a Canadian, Rock History Canada covers the greatest Canadian musicians in the last 40 years. So check out the links in the description. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book. Take care.